There we go.
Okay, we're on the air. So again, welcome. My name is Roseanne. If everyone would like to just introduce themselves and your institution, I think that would be helpful for the group, and then we will get started with our discussion today.
Okay, I'll start. I'm Brenna Wade. I am a public services librarian at Hillsdale College, and we're a very small institution, about 1,500 students, so I wear about 5 different hats, so outreach being one of them.
Great, welcome.
Hi, I'm Melissa Harden. I am a user services specialist at the Earth Sciences and Map Library at the University of Colorado Boulder. And I'm here, I do outreach for my branch on that campus, but I'm also a member of our library's outreach group, which consists of, I guess, maybe like 7 or 8 people who all have primary responsibilities related to outreach. And some of them may be in the room kind of listening to this discussion, but I'll be the primary spokesperson, I guess, for us today. So.
Great, welcome.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Ilana Karshmer. You can't see me, but I'm here. I don't have a webcam in my office. I am also a member of the Academic Outreach Committee for ULS, and I'm kind of the backup facilitator. So if you guys don't talk, I'll be like, making stuff up. No, I'm kidding. I don't do any outreach really, except because in the way that it affects instruction, because I'm the instruction program and information literacy librarian at St. Leo University, which is in St. Leo, Florida, which is basically in the middle of nowhere in Florida, but it's close to Tampa. So that's what I do.
And a little bit about my position. I work in all of the areas of co-curricular outreach for the university libraries at UNLV in Las Vegas. And I collaborate with all the campus partners to coordinate outreach activities and programs in the library and on campus. And I'm the point person for and represent the library on our new student orientation committee for campus. So it's a timely discussion. So our discussion today is going to focus on how libraries approach various orientation activities. We're going to talk a little bit about both new student and transfer orientations, which may be typically held in the summer, as well as the myriad of activities that libraries offer to welcome students back in the fall. So let's get started and just chat a little bit about what type of activities do you do currently for orientation?
I can start, but so the University of Colorado Boulder has recently, the campus has undergone pretty major changes with their approach to student orientation. So last year, I think, was the first year that they had some big changes, and they've transferred all the sort of required content to the online course management software, which we have as D2L. But they have optional orientation days in the summer, and if I understand it correctly, I think it's about, last year it was about 4, and maybe 1 or 2 of them were specific to transfer students. So they try to get it that way, but I don't know how well attended it was or how well they thought it went, because it sounds like they're going to be doing some pretty major changes again this coming year. So I'm actually interested to gather information from you all about how you handle things, because we're looking at how we're going to redo things. But during those orientation days, we've had the various libraries on our campus have offered open house sessions if they want to, if they're able to staff that. And to give informal tours at those times, or tabling at what they call like their academic information fair, which has a bunch of various student services and academic services in a room. We also did create content for that online orientation module, so they do get content that way about the libraries. For the transfer students, one thing that one of my colleagues, or 2 of my colleagues, tried last year was, the year before, was an Instagram scavenger hunt specifically for the transfer students, and it maybe wasn't super highly attended, but the people who came absolutely loved it, and so I think that's something that we would pursue again in the future or try to improve on.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing.
For us, the main orientation is in the fall. The Student Activities Board does a big thing called The Source, and it's where all the clubs and some businesses from town and a few organizations on campus have basically booths, and that's where the students come and learn about what is available on campus. We always make sure we have a table there. It's I think we're mostly the main like academic college department that has a table, but we try and get our name out there. We advertise that we do tours in the afternoon, which is also on the orientation schedule, which gets us some foot traffic there. And we give out rubber ducks, which is, I'm not entirely sure how it got started. Let me find mine. This is my personal favorite. It's a reading duck, and so we just order those and give those out. And we have students who come by every year because they want to collect a duck every year. We do giveaways, things like that. We don't do anything for transfer students right now. I'm not entirely sure that there is a transfer student orientation, and if there is, I'm not familiar with it, but that is definitely one of my goals for the coming year, is to figure out how to reach out to our transfer students. So I'm definitely interested in ideas on that front as well.
Great. Well, at UNLV, we have about 18 new student orientation sessions over the summer, where they're full-day events where 300 or 400 students come each day. And some of those are designated as transfer student orientations, and some of them are specifically for new students. And then there's like a kind of catch-all days where they get students that may have missed an orientation. And we have a library presentation to parents. They have breakout sessions for parents where the library presents about 30 minutes of content to parents that choose to go to that breakout session. We also table at a resource fair that's similar to kind of what you were sharing about at Boulder. And then we have a morning session where there's a presentation about all of the different campus partners, resources, and services, and we're grouped together with a group of people from like the Academic Success Center, Career Services, International Programs, and we put together a student panel where that student panel talks a little bit about how they've used those services in kind of a Q&A fashion, and it's kind of embedded in between other content that includes like videos and different things about campus. So that's kind of our current involvement for orientation. And Alana, I don't know if you do have orientation activities that you know much about that someone else in your library may coordinate?
We do. The only orientation that we really do is we're involved, and it's not, I wouldn't classify it specifically as orientation, is we have a course that all brand new students and transfer students have to take when they come. It's kind of an introduction to the university course, which I know a lot of universities probably have. The students have to do a library activity and an in-library session as part of that course. And I should say I'm responsible for the content of that library session as part of my job. And so we do see every single section of that course, and at this point, that's about 37 sections in the fall. So I do see 37 times about 18 students every fall coming in, and then like 3 sections in the spring. And you know, that's our one chance to sort of, it has to be, we've decided that we want it to be more than just, you know, welcome to the library, it's a great place, come hang out with us kind of thing. It does have an instruction component where we do some, you know, instruction. We teach them how to use a couple of resources, things like that. But, you know, we've had debates on whether they actually take stuff away from that, whether they remember that, given the fact that there isn't an assignment in that course that requires them to then use those resources. So we sort of come back to that. Is that, you know, is it working, so forth? And we've been told that students don't necessarily like it and blah, blah, blah. So we're sort of in the throes of redesigning that, and it will be probably quite different in the future. But that is sort of our chance to do outreach with incoming students. But it is the only course where we see every single student that comes into the university, which is very important. And when we were recently told by the woman who is in charge of that course that she wanted to take that out completely, I have to say I was completely against that idea. You know, that's a terrible idea, and I was not shy about telling her, that's a really bad idea. No, I don't like it. So, you know, we did have some discussion about that. I'll say discussion because that's a nicer word than how I felt. But so we will be looking into ways that we can change that in the future.
Yeah, it sounds like we all have to advocate for how we want our library to be involved in those kinds of activities, whether it be, course related at the beginning of the semester or it's an orientation session.
Sure.
We're always negotiating that.
Yes.
So in like the case of our orientations, we hold them over the summer, but then there's like separate activities that happen from campus units to kind of welcome students to campus for Welcome Week. Have any of you participated in any Welcome Week activities or partnered to do that with another campus unit?
So one of our Welcome Week activities was something called Librarians on the Move, and we just had a couple, like 2 staff or faculty members going around with a cart that had swag, candy, whatever. And it seems like mostly they just got directions of like where is whatever building, or needing directions around campus, questions about that. But the librarians were able to answer them, and so we felt like that was good PR that way. So probably something we would try again. And then I forgot to mention earlier too that sort of individual librarians who maybe aren't necessarily associated with our outreach group will do various Week of Welcome or orientation type activities for targeted groups of students or certain academic disciplines, and those sort of sometimes operate a little bit more independently and separately in our libraries. So there may be other things that we do that I'm not necessarily aware of.
Sure, like maybe doing welcoming to colleges when they have some of those academic open houses, things like that, and then like the liaisons. We have liaisons that go to our college specific open houses at the start of the semester.
Right, exactly like that, and then also sort of first generation college students or identified as at-risk students, that sort of thing.
So you have some specific programs for those groups?
The campus does, and yeah.
Oh, okay. And then the library participates.
We try to file in with them, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any ways, like outside of maybe tabling or representing the library at those events, that you've done anything that you could share?
I'm gonna defer here for a moment. Okay, so we had upper level students create videos of Research Demystified, and they shared their knowledge and wisdom of what they've learned and what they would want to tell newer students coming in.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so I don't know as much personally about that project, but it sounds like it was pretty successful. So.
And a different way to approach welcoming those students.
Yeah.
Anyone else partnering for Welcome Week activities or having Welcome Week specific activities?
Ours is essentially all Welcome Week activities because we don't have summer orientations. So basically kind of what I mentioned with that. But we do also try to reach out to our grad students. We have one graduate program, and every year there's about, I don't know, maybe 10 or so the new master's and PhD candidates who come through. And so I always try and we do a specific tour of the library for them, and then we also, I offer a citation management workshop for them, which has gone over fairly well. And that's not something we necessarily offer to the undergraduates because it's not as applicable, but that's kind of the main things that we do.
You bring up a great point about outreach and orientation for graduate students. I'm sure that a lot of people have those programs in place for when they're welcoming graduate students. We have separate orientation for them as well. And someone else that actually coordinates it that works more primarily with the graduate college for UNLV in our case. But that is another group that people typically are planning outreach activities for. And in our case for Welcome Week, this is the first time I've been invited to a meeting where we're unifying the activities on campus. There's a campus coordinator with the Office of Student Engagement and Diversity and Student Affairs, and they're kind of gathering all of the different groups that have those activities throughout the first 2 weeks of classes for Welcome Weeks, and we're doing a unified calendar and kind of planning strategically who is offering which engagement activity at what time. And this is going to be the first year in the fall that the library has an event on the schedule. So we're kind of in the planning stages, but by getting at the table with those meetings, we're planning it around when it's kind of best with the campus calendar, and then we're going to get campus marketing as a result of it. So moving along, let's see what else we have to talk about today. What about community or campus partnerships? Has that been fruitful for orientation outreach or welcome week activities? Is there a specific partnership that's maybe been successful for you or something that you could share? Anyone? Not so much.
Well, we have on campus, we have a learning resource center, which is sort of like a tutoring center.
Mm-hmm.
And over the past couple of years, we have sort of encountered a lot of students, and you probably have as well, coming to the library asking for assistance with their papers specifically. And a lot of us have, second masters or whatever in fields that make helping with writing quite possible, but then some people didn't. So one of the ideas that our director had was to actually add 2 writing tutors to our faculty. So we actually have 2 writing instructors that live and work in the library full time. So students can make appointments with these 2 writing instructors and get help, workshopping their essays and so forth. So that sort of was going on separately. And then we had our Learning Resource Center. And quite recently, a new person took over as sort of the director of the Learning Resource Center, and someone took over as that person's director or supervisor. And now there's a lot more collaboration between the Learning Resource Center and our writing instructors. So now there is a lot of outreach that's happening between our writing instructors and the Learning Resource Center, because the people who work in the Learning Resource Center tend to be, people with bachelor's degrees. Our 2 writing instructors both have master's degrees. So they're, probably better qualified to teach and help students with writing. And they're really trying to get people to see all of the services that are available, to come to either the library for help with writing, or if that's really what they need, or to go to the Learning Resource Center, but to sort of make it all one unit instead of these just distinct silos. We have something here, there's something over there, who knows where you're supposed to go. Mm-hmm. We've also talked about trying to join forces so that we possibly put someone in the Learning Resource Center, a librarian, for a few hours a day, so that students who go to the Learning Resource Center for help will actually be able to talk to a librarian instead of just talking to someone who has a bachelor's degree and may not have any training in research.
Great. So are those things that then you'll promote when you're doing some of your orientations with students in that class?
Yeah, definitely. I would sort of just make sure when you're over there, if you need help, don't just assume that, that you can only stop and get help with your writing, that if you actually need help with with finding research or finding resources, whatever, that we're over there and you can stop and talk to us there as well. But I think getting out of the library is sort of a key. Mm-hmm. And saying that, having a stronger presence on campus, and that we're not just over here in our building, that we're actually, out and about, and we can come to you if you need us.
Great.
So we work with the International Students Office in various ways, including video tours, various presentations, just sort of ongoing programming. So maybe not necessarily specific just to orientation, but
okay.
But that plus some more. And then we have a couple like summer bridge programs on campus that we will work with, and then a special grant or scholarship funded groups. Like there's a bachelor to graduate grant-funded pilot project that's possibly replacing the National McNair Scholars funding, so we work with that group as well.
Okay, and some of those activities probably take place throughout the year.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about those video tours? Is it so they don't come into the building physically, they see a tour remotely, or like as their prospective student?
I think because it's on the library's YouTube channel, it could be accessed by anybody, but they're in different languages, right? So I think actually this was a grant-funded project, like a campus grant that we worked with. It was a partnership with a couple librarians and working with students who speak languages. I think that they're in, I want to say, Arabic, Chinese, off the top of my head, I can't think of the other ones, but I think we made maybe 4 or 5 videos in different languages, and we got students who speak those languages to then be videotaped giving the tours of the libraries, and then they're out there in their native languages just to help make them feel comfortable when they first come.
Oh, that's fantastic. To talk a little bit about tours, I think it's a good segue. Do you offer tours as part of orientation, to the group? And if you don't, is it part of, like the admissions process, or are you part of the tour, the campus tour? How do you kind of consider tours as part of your orientation activities?
I know for us, we do offer, and they're listed as optional, but they give the students, the incoming students, a orientation itinerary of the things that are available, and most of those are mandatory activities, but they do have a space on, I think it is Tuesday afternoons, where we offer 2 optional library tours, and that's a very big part of our orientation activities. They have been getting rather large, which is a good problem to have, but when you have 30 students following you around throughout the library, it can be a little unwieldy at times. That is one of our kind of main orientation. The grad student tours that I mentioned is a lot better actually, because it's a smaller group and they can ask very specific questions. And but yeah, that's kind of an integral part of our orientation activities.
And who provides your tours? Is it librarians? Is it staff?
Yes, the librarians provide them, and I do the grad student tours, and then we have 4 regular librarians and a director, so the 4 of us take turns with the undergraduate tours. There's usually 2 of us each half-hour time slot, and going in different directions. And then but we're also for just like a general perspective type thing, we're on the campus tours. Mm-hmm. So and those are led by students who work for admissions. They usually don't go past the first floor, and the information can be a little shaky sometimes, but it's generally pretty good. So
great.
We have a very similar experience with our campus-wide tours. There are people here who work at the libraries who attempt to train and give out the correct information for the students leading the tours to give, but that can be spotty at times. But we'll see tour groups kind of parading through or standing outside the library, and I'll hear them saying things like, "It's really important to find your study spot the first moment you get here." I actually heard that about 10 minutes before this video started. So so they're not maybe getting like in-depth library information that way, but they are getting the main library as a tour spot. But then the libraries, like we here, will actually do specific tours on occasion for special groups like graduate students or new faculty or sometimes high school librarians in the area. And then there are online tours available as well.
That's great. Yeah, we're kind of the same format. Most of our tours are admissions student leaders or counselors bringing through large groups of students, both for during new student orientation, but all year long, like prospective students that are touring campus, and then of course those groups that have been admitted and are doing campus tours. We have the same challenge around kind of the message and how to train those tour leaders on changes about the library. Our spaces have been going through a lot of enhancements, so we've been constantly kind of working through that communication challenge. But one tactic that's kind of worked well for us is I've been able to get them to come in for in-house training. And so we've been able to train the tour leaders to give the tour their way through their words, but kind of with our message. And then talking about things that have changed and maybe how a good way to talk about these services or resources has been helpful for us. But tours are just kind of part of the whole orientation experience, not really a key part for us. They see the building, they come through, they see the first floor, but we don't offer, in-depth tours to 5,000 students. So next question I have for everyone is, how do you manage all of these activities? Do you recruit volunteers? Is it part of people's assigned jobs? What kind of groups are involved in delivering all of these orientation activities?
Well, like I've mentioned, we're rather small, so the librarians all chip in on that. I'm the main contact person for it, and I do most of the outreach and orientation activities. We do share the tours, and we share times out at the student booth at the source, handing out bags and talking with students, things like that. But in general, I'm kind of the main point person for it. But we also, an incoming freshman class is probably less than 400 students, so we don't have the same amount of people coming through.
So we have a somewhat large faculty and staff here in the libraries, and so we had our marketing manager, I think, actually sent out an email to the whole faculty staff list asking if anybody would agree to be an ambassador, and then their name gets put on an email list. So when we have these events pop up, sometimes on shorter notice than others, somebody is able to email that list and say who's willing to staff this table at this time, or who's willing to lead this tour, or be here for that, etc. And I think that's worked out pretty well. That's sort of a new addition in the last year or so, I think. Yeah, that it seems to work pretty well right now.
Okay. We use peer research coaches that are undergraduate students that are in a special program for some of our activities, in addition to myself and other volunteers. But I find that by training the fellow students, that the peer coaches are a great way for the other students to learn about new things on campus. They're currently enrolled in undergraduate courses themselves. They're a great spokesperson and kind of really our ambassador to the library. That's been one of the main ways that we've been able to leverage and deliver outreach programs in addition to our orientation activities, but they actually are trained to give those parent presentations I talked about earlier. They're also trained to table independently without, a librarian supervising an activity, and so they're really involved in delivering our outreach activities. So I just thought I would add that myself. And what about what you've learned, lessons learned, maybe tips or things that didn't go well that you thought would go really well, and things that you maybe could share, or any recommendations for future planning? No lessons learned?
I can't think of anything major that we're doing, that has really bombed, but we're always constantly tweaking and into see what works and what doesn't. I think especially the tours, trying to tweak those, but in all honesty, we also don't want to give up any of that coveted time on the orientation schedule, so we kind of take what we can get with that. So.
And as I mentioned at the beginning, our campus is sort of reevaluating all of orientation activities at the moment. So we're sort of taking everything bit by bit and just seeing how we can fit in each year if there are going to be new changes. So.
Is there a campus committee that someone in your library is able to sit on and kind of participate in that planning, or is it a planning that's happening outside of the organization?
Yeah, we have library representatives working with that.
Great. That's great. What about assessment? I know we talked a lot about all of these activities that we're doing, but it's often difficult, especially with the volume of, whether it's 30 people on a tour, 10 tours over the course of 3 days. How are you looking and thinking about assessing these efforts? Is this something that's on your mind? Is it something that you're considering investing time into?
We don't do a whole lot with assessment. I'm personally really bad at remembering to count, so that's something that I'm always working on, because my boss always asks me every event I throw, everything we do, how many people showed up? And I'm always like, so I'm trying to remember to count and see how many students we had actually show up to tours and things like that. But that's kind of the main takeaways with that. It's almost impossible to count how many people actually stop by the booth during the kind of welcome week thing. But other than that, I do, generally look at how many ducks we handed out, and if we handed out most of them, then that's, generally a good thing too. We usually have, I don't know, I try and make sure we have about 300 to 400 ducks, so I can account that way. But
yeah, we definitely try to keep track of how many people we're interacting with or attending various activities, whatever they may be. But we do have plans, particularly within our outreach group that I mentioned here in the libraries, to come up with a more systematic way of doing that, so that in the future we can do that. So after we sort of have plans in place to actively collect statistics on anything from like attendance to activities to timing, et cetera, whatever it might be, we will then probably create or create a guide of more structured plans for targeted assessment in the future. So it's sort of like we're kind of at the beginning now and thinking longer term about how we'd like to really have, I think, solid statistical gathering for the future, and then really determine what's worth our time without also, kind of like what you were saying, you don't want to give up whatever they're willing to give you, but we also have to weigh that against, like, if we're only talking to one person at some activity, is that worth our time? What could we do instead to try to get at other people's?
Yeah, one of the reasons why I started training our peer coaches to give those parent presentations that I mentioned is because I found, I was giving presentations to like 6 parents for a half an hour, and I was spending a lot of time being on campus, being available for these sessions, when I found and then I started having them deliver the peer coaches deliver the presentation with me side by side, and the parents were even more responsive to the students than they were necessarily to some, UNLV campus person. And then I started thinking about the time involved and the skills that they would get, and it ended up being worthwhile to train them to do that by reflecting kind of on, is this a good use of the library's time? We don't really want to give up the breakout session. It's valuable to have that opportunity to engage with parents, but is it the best use of my personal time when I have students that can gain presentation skills and they can deliver the message just as well as I could? So those are some things definitely that we've thought about. And I think we're in a little bit of the same place with assessment. We're doing a really good job of collecting how many people we're engaging with, how many students are coming through at tabling, how many when we give tours, who's on the tour, how many students, what's the demographic. But then how do you start to think about, like, is this effective? What are they learning by spending the time with us in this way? And gathering that data is a little bit trickier. So that's kind of where we personally are. Alana, what do you do with your, I know your orientation is more class involved, but is there any assessment involved?
We do an assessment that has basically like a written survey. So we do really like an evaluation type survey of the students that has them ask them to sort of assess the actual session, and then we use that to sort of make revisions to what we're teaching. We also ask the instructors that come, we require that the instructors come with their classes. We ask them to fill out a form as well, and then we take their feedback and use that to make any changes that we feel necessary as well. The other thing that we do is sort of a different kind of assessment to actually measure whether we feel they're learning, is we do have an assignment that they do as a result of the session. And so we sort of, at times, we try to look at the results of those assignments and see, are they actually getting out of the session what we think they should be getting out of it? So that's also kind of a part of our assessment plan. And in general, we think that they kind of are, although, like I said, we recently had some I guess you could say, a stressful situation arise with this whole session, and we were told that the students think it's elementary and they think it's very basic, which, well, they don't really understand it, so of course it's a little bit basic. So, there's always that sort of discussion that's ongoing, but we're always looking for ways to be more interactive and more engaging, and that's we're all about that, because it's, obviously the more engaged they are, we feel like the more they're actually going to retain.
Great. What about virtual, I know that we talked a little bit about virtual tours, but is there anything else that anyone can share about virtual orientations? Any application of that approach with any students?
So I think I mentioned this at the beginning that we just have content that's part of that new student module that's on our CMS. So that's the approach that we're now taking because that's the way the campus is moving. So.
Right. And what's some of the content that's on there?
That's a good question.
If you can share, if you don't have a list, it's okay.
So it's basic introductory, probably similar to what a lot of libraries are doing for orientation type activities, and there's a little bit of a quiz because the D2L is set up to allow that. So that's how some of it is mandatory content, right? And then some of it is sort of just optional extra. Yeah. So.
Okay, great. Because they're required to do that online module, is that correct?
So part of it is required, but yeah.
For all students. Okay, great.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Any other virtual plans that you're considering or thinking about?
Oh goodness, I don't know. Maybe in the future. I think we need to see how this orientation is going to roll out in the next, at least over the next year, because if that becomes a bigger emphasis on the campus, I'm sure that we would explore other opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else have any thoughts on that? No. Okay. So if you would have to pick maybe one thing that you would say has been the best use of your time, if you could highlight that, or the most successful outreach through orientation, any activity that you think, this is the one we can't let go of.
I know we haven't really talked about this, but I'd say that we find the most beneficial orientation to actually be to our faculty. Okay. We meet with the new faculty every fall, and that to us is invaluable because we get to meet the new faculty, we get to see them face to face, and it's just the best way. Often that forges, at least a recognition, and then along with all the other welcome to campus stuff going on, you usually see them at least a couple times that week, and then you get to talking, and then maybe they'll remember that you do instruction, so they'll come and ask for an instruction session, or they'll come to you for research or interlibrary loan or anything like that. So building those connections just with that starting basis of this orientation where we introduce ourselves and give a brief overview of what the library has proven just really invaluable for us.
I would say it's been, for us, if I were to pick one, I asked a tough question that I'm not sure I have the answer to. If I were to pick one thing that would be the most valuable, I think the time that actually we've invested in training the tour leaders has been, because they're seeing so many of the students, has been really one of the more valuable progresses that we've made. But I think that we wouldn't want to give up any of the time that we have throughout those orientation days over the summer either.
This is going to sound crazy, but as part of our library session that we do with the incoming students, we have this video that we had made, and it's it's kind of dorky, I'll say that, but it's also kind of funny. Okay, it's library funny, if you all know what I'm saying. But it was made by a professional company, so it's not like one of us was holding a camera. I mean, it was like a professional video company, so it was edited properly, and we hired actual actors to portray the students, and one of my colleagues and I are actually in it, and it has a real script and everything. So it's kind of funny. It's a little funny, yeah, sort of. But one of the things that I think we're most proud of is that when the students have to watch it before they come to the library session, and one of the things that happens every semester is we get, oh my gosh, you were in the video, and we're like, yes, we were. And it sounds crazy, but that recognition, and they see us and they're like, that was funny. Okay, they're kind of being kind, because it's really not hilarious or anything, but it's amusing, I'll say. It sort of is it makes us seem more approachable. It makes us seem like, we're human beings, that we're not just these, it just gives us sort of an in with them that we probably wouldn't have otherwise. And it's been something that we did it a few years ago. We've updated it a couple of times because, of course, we had to get, we had to get a new website, and we had to get a whole bunch. We got WMS. We had to get all these new things that we had to account for, and it's just something that we keep coming back to, and it's something that, for me at least, that I feel like, that was something that we did that was pretty cool, I have to say. I've never been in a professional video before, and I probably never will be again. No one's knocking on my door. But, it's funny-ish, and it's kind of cool. So I'm a little proud of it, I have to say.
It definitely gives you an introduction.
It does, and it's, people are like, it's kind of dorky, and I'm like, well, it was supposed to be, a little bit. So, it helps. It helps when you can laugh at yourself a little bit, I think.
Okay. Any other thoughts on most successful? I think that everybody got covered, right? So it sounds like everybody's participating in these activities every year, and that we're mostly doing things based on kind of what we can negotiate with the campus schedule and, where those opportunities align. Is there anything that you want to plan that you want to talk out at this point, or anything that you would like to brainstorm with this group while we're together? Are there any ideas you were hoping to get from this session that we haven't yet given?
I guess I'd like to hear a little bit more about what people do for their transfer students. Like I said, it's something I definitely have on my to-do list, but haven't figured out how or what. Basic level would just be trying to arrange a tour, but I'd be really interested in other things.
Also.
Yeah.
Anyone have anything that they could say that they do specifically for transfer students?
I think I mentioned at the beginning that a couple of people here had done an Instagram scavenger hunt in the libraries for the transfer students, and it sounds like they just really loved it. And it seems like on the schedule, it was one of the only things that was actually specifically targeted to transfer students. I think that probably made them feel pretty good in that sense. And then they really enjoyed it. So probably something we would try to expand on in the future.
Was it something that there was like, if you complete it, you get entered to win like a prize? Was there some kind of incentive attached?
No, no big prize or anything like that.
It's just a way for them to get involved, and Instagram obviously is popular.
Right, right.
Okay. We haven't done anything really as specific as I would like for transfer students. It's something that's on my list for this year. We have a lot of transfer students that come from neighboring colleges in the Las Vegas area, and so it's definitely a demographic that I want to connect with and plan some activities for, but I haven't yet figured out what that's going to be for the fall. So we're in the same place as you are. Anyone else have anything that they wanted to kind of talk a little bit more about that we haven't yet covered? Does anyone do any specific like marketing or creating of displays for Welcome Week or orientation, or the kind of this new student demographic? Is there anything specific that you do with these students coming in? Messaging?
I mean, our marketing manager oversees sort of the creation of just general, I guess we call them rack cards, like little bit, like the most basic information about the libraries, and so that is often available in what we sort of give out at these orientation events, but certainly not specific to that. It's stuff that we sometimes just have out all the time as well, but is definitely what we give out along with our little swag, which we have these little academic survival kits, what we call them. They're like tiny little containers that have mini stapler and mini staples and mini tape dispenser in them, which by the way, people absolutely love. I'm not sure they lose them right away or use them all the time, but they absolutely love them. And I think it's sort of a unique thing that we give away. And then we can also give them sort of the information at the same time to make it seem really exciting that we're giving them, you know, information as well. So,
Are they? Do you hand them out like separately, or do they kind of attach?
Separately. I mean, we sort of say like they're not actually physically attached to each other, but we'll be like, here's information and here's your academic survival kit, you know, that sort of thing. So.
Yeah, I think I know we use, and it sounds like with the ducks, that we all use some kind of incentive to get people over to talk to us, something shiny that students will be attracted to. And it sounds like, do you use the academic survival kits like all year long or just specifically for orientation?
At these types of events that come up all year long. And I know that recently a very large order of other items was placed to give out in the future. So TBD what will be the most exciting for people to take away, but yeah.
Yeah, I always shop what other tables have out, so I know
exactly.
not to buy the same up. So I understand.
Yeah.
Promotional items are, I mean, it's a big thing about what we do with, you know, orientation tabling. So.
Yep.
Any other specific marketing? I mean, we don't really advertise that we're involved in orientation because the students are showing up and we're there. But I know that we'll do some specific orientation welcome week marketing to the campus and on in the library for when we have those welcome week events. But I don't know if anyone else does specific messaging.
I try and do something fun in the display area for, and this is for all the students coming back. This past year, I actually did a library shelfie display, and I asked the faculty if they could send me a selfie and a shelfie. It didn't have to be a true selfie, though I did get some pretty epic ones from the faculty, which made me really happy. But I actually had a lot of buy-in for that, which is really awesome. I filled up a whole trifold with pictures of their shelfies, and it was a contest of trying to match the professor with their bookshelf. I didn't have as many people participate in the actual contest, but a lot of people stopped by and looked at the display and talked about it. It's not as applicable, I guess, to the new students since they don't know the professors yet, which I definitely wondered about that, you know, all these freshmen coming in, and then but it also is kind of a fun way to introduce them to that, because we had a lot of departments participate that are not necessarily the most popular department, shall we say. There's some smaller departments and things, which was really great to get buy-in from, you know, all across the campus. In the past, I've done, you know, just basic things. I did an epics display one year and said to an epic school year kind of thing, kind of cheesy, but yeah, so just trying to make it welcoming in that like entry lobby display area.
Great.
Yeah, I can think of one that I did in my own branch, so the Earth Sciences and Map Library specifically, and it was the theme of the display was introducing the Earth Sciences and Map Library, and then I just picked books from our collection that all had like the word introduction in the title. So it'd be like introduction to, you know, GIS or something like that, to show off what our collection has, is the types of subjects that we have in our library, but also just to sort of play on the introductions thing. And I can't say that it was like, I have no idea how people felt when they walked by it, but it was fun for me to put together anyways. So.
Great. Well, I would like to thank everyone for joining this discussion. We're done a little bit early today, I think in part because we're a smaller group, but I hope that these conversations have given everyone some ideas that are new and useful to consider for all of our orientation and welcome week planning. Following today's roundtable, you'll receive an email with an evaluation survey. We really hope that you'll complete this so that you can help us improve the online roundtable discussion experience for you and other participants. We do have one more of these planned for June, and it is going to actually be on faculty outreach. So as it's definitely a group that's different than incoming students, we wanted to plan a separate online discussion for that. So you'll see probably a week and a half, 2 weeks before an email invitation go out for that, and we would welcome you to come and participate in that discussion so that we can talk more about how we welcome and onboard new faculty and how we engage through just general faculty outreach. So thank you again for all of your time and participation, and sorry if I put anyone too much on the spot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.